Okay, I guess I'll start with my introduction, and thank you so much everyone for joining us today. This is a series called Visualizing the Climate Crisis, and this is a series in which this is the third episode, and in this series we explore the potential and the role that contemporary photography and visual art and visual storytelling can have together with other disciplines in addressing some of the very complex issues related to climate change. So usually we invite visual journalists or storytellers reporting on climate change issues, and they will always be in conversation with some professionals representing a diverse range of disciplines, and they can change all the time. They can be sometimes science, policy making, education, architecture, social innovation, media, and more. We started with a specific topic because we realized that people feel more connected to the story, and what we say it's more concrete and more applicable in a way. And is a way for also the professions that talk together to explore the possibility of thinking beyond each discipline in a very genuinely transdisciplinary approach, because our job is to try to see in a way we can expand the reach, involve the wider public, and involve the masses to move towards tangible changes and solutions. As I said, this is the third talk, and the first one was on ocean acidification, the second one on virtual water, and this one is on the fashion system. You can find the previous talks and videos on our website, which is everythingisconnected.eu, and also on the website of 7Insider, which is our partner, together with UAL, University of the Arts London. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Maria Teresa Salvati. I'm a founder and director of Everything is Connected, which is a transdisciplinary platform that aims at creating new paradigms for communicating and engaging the public with on topics related to climate change. So today I have the pleasure to have with me two great guests. One is Rebecca Cappelli, which is a filmmaker and activist, and Sara Sozzani Maino, educator and creative director. Together we'll try to kind of delve into the complex fashion system and trying to understand who is that really needs to start or in a way inspire to lead the systemic changes that the industry requires in order to be truly sustainable and just for people, planet, and animals beyond the greenwashing that we all kind of see around. So first of all, I wanted to give you a little introduction onto why we decided to talk about more the fashion system rather than the fast fashion, which seems to be the most talked about topic in the area of fashion. So when we talk about the fashion system, we refer to a network of individuals, businesses, and institutions truly interconnected, which and that involves like the production of raw materials, which is principally refers to fibers and textiles, but also leather and fur. And of course, this interconnected network involves also designers, manufacturers, contractors, retailers, and various forms of also advertising and promotion. When we started to study the topic, we realized some incredible numbers, and some of those are that starting with a definition from the United Nations that reports that the fashion industry is the second most polluting of all industries in the world, which results into around 10% of the all carbon emissions, 20% of the global wastewater, deforestation, releasing and using microplastic and releasing microplastic in the atmosphere, on land and in our bodies, killing billions of animals, which and also the fashion system is responsible for poor working conditions, unfair wages, child labor, and all the the really bad condition in which workers in the sweatshops are obliged to work. So as we know, the system is also responsible for, in a way, perpetuating the economic paradigm, which is the one leading to social and climate injustice. And of course, the ones paying for it are workers, animals, and the planet. So we believe that while fast fashion is really important and probably also more tangible, not really tangible, but something that people can relate more to. So probably we'll try to discuss together on why we mainly talk about fast fashion. But one of the problem of focusing on fast fashion, I believe, is that we continue blaming the masses. And so those that cannot really afford expensive and more sustainable solutions, the risk is that we forget those that actually harm the planet, people, and animals, and probably are also responsible for driving the inspiration of the masses to follow some trends which are even worse. So my point being, we need to have a broader conversation and dismantle a system in order to which is very complex and articulated, if we want to really find comprehensive and more holistic solutions. So this was the premise. I'll pass the word to Rebecca Cappelli. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, Rebecca, thank you for having me.
Hello. Thank you so much. Your view is very important here. And Rebecca is an award-winning French filmmaker and animal rights activist based in Switzerland. Her work aims at creating culture change and to empower people to become advocates for the animals, the planet, and vulnerable communities. Would you like to tell us something about your form of activism? We call it artivism, which is a mix between art and activism, and where your passion and care for animals comes from. And why do you think in the public discussion about the issues and consequences of the fashion industry, the use, cruelty, and exploitation of animals is one of the most dismissed, despite some striking numbers that I learned also from your film. For example, 1.5 billion of animals being killed every year for leather. So why do you think so? And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. So I think it all starts with the fact that fashion is about beauty and illusion. And, people, including brands, but also consumers, don't really want to see what happens behind the scenes. And that's true for garment workers, for fast fashion. That's also true for the waste. We don't want to look at the waste and the mess that we are creating. We don't want really to look at the environmental impact of fashion. But when it comes to animals, I have to say they've been pretty absent from the conversation around sustainability and ethics in fashion, and this is why I made Slay to change that. So Slay is a feature documentary investigating fur, leather, and wool industries, their impact on people, planet, and animals. And we ended up actually investigating in 7 countries, looking at the whole scale of the issue. And you mentioned 1.5 billion animals that are skinned for leather every year. It's actually the total number. We're talking about 2.5 billion animals that are skinned and killed for fashion every year. And so that includes, of course, animals that are skinned for leather. So for the vast majority, yes, they are killed primarily for their flesh, but skin are a very valuable co-product for brands. And then it includes everything from exotic skins, where the animals such as crocodiles and snakes would be killed primarily for their skin, and feathers, exotic feathers like ostrich feathers that are making a really big comeback in fashion as more brands are letting go of fur. The fur industry is still, you know, slaughtering 100 million animals every single year. And of course, the wool industry is actually not without harms. So I feel like as a filmmaker myself, my responsibility is to tell these stories, and by working myself being on the ground as much as possible, but also with working with a range of professionals. And some of them have been working on some of these issues for several decades and have been obtaining some, you know, some really, really precious images. So we're talking about investigators, for instance, that are putting themselves through a lot of trauma, but also taking huge risks to expose what is happening in this animal exploitation industry. So I'm going to share a few visuals. So please, people, don't worry, they are not graphic. I feel like my role also as an activist, as you put it, is to really tell these stories without inducing trauma into the viewer. Of course, there are images that we can share on social media and people have access to, and I think these are important to see as well. But at the same time, it's all about telling a story without, you know, the gruesome reality that is happening. Because quite frankly, what is you know, you just mentioned leather. The skinning process of leather and the origin of skins is a process that is completely unwatchable. And it doesn't matter if it's a fast fashion brand or a luxury brand. It's really, really hard to see images. So this is not what I'm going to share right now. This is very vanilla, so don't worry. I'm going to talk a little bit about this image. So this is basically vulnerable communities in India that are living next to tanneries, where again, a lot of the leather in the West, most of the leather we wear everywhere is actually produced in the global South. And that affects not only garment workers, but also local communities that do not have any, you know, other choice than, you know, they cannot just move. And you mentioned, Maya, you mentioned the cycle, you know, the vicious circle of fashion. These systems really keep people in, you know, vicious cycles of poverty. This is a woman that lives in the farm agriculture area next to tanneries. And this family with the 3-4 children cannot educate the kids because her husband was completely crippled by the chemicals that are leaking from the tanneries all the way into the farmlands. And these are really important stories to tell. I'm just going to go a bit all over the place because my images are not really in the right order. This is an image from an investigation taken in the Angora wool industry. This is in France. And this is obviously a very small exploitation. As you can see, the animals are tied and, you know, like combed very harshly to get the wool. I would say the good news is that the Caring Group has announced last month that it was banning rabbit fur and Angora wool from their collection after a call to action by actually myself and Emma Hackinson from Collective Fashion Justice. In Slay, we covered fur farms. This is taken by a really, really great photographer that is actually part and contributor of We Animals Media. And his name is Andrew Scoron. This is fur farms in Europe. And I think what's really important when we show animals, like, you know, it's a shot, but it tells so many, there's so many information in that shot. I can tell you, like, what you see above the cages is actually the food for the animals. It's not feces. This is what they are fed. It's kind of like a mixture of waste. And of course, these animals are caged forever. This is one of the strongest shots as well of the film. I really like this shot. It's really heartbreaking, but it is really a fox looking into the camera, asking the viewer, asking fashion consumers, like, why are we doing this? And I think that's what you see a lot in fashion is that, what you see a lot on fur farms is animals that are completely the incomprehension in their eyes. I'm just going to share a couple more shots. So this is fur trapping in the US that was taken by an investigator infiltrating trappers. This is a raccoon dog a raccoon that actually fought so hard to evade the trapper, but he's trapped underwater. And of course, he did not win that fight. But I think it's really important that we share these images. I was sharing how it's completely unwatchable to show the actual process for skinning. So one thing that we did in Slay is actually I am filming myself looking at this on a computer, on a laptop. So to create a bit of distance and to kind of protect the viewer from really what is happening. At the same time, we can't sanitize the truth, but it's really important that we show these images. This is from India. This is the skins after the slaughter and before they get tanned. I love this shot because it tells so much in one image. You can see the workers in tanneries that have no protection, working with a lot of chemicals, and you see the leather sign, of course, that is adorning the wall on the top right. And this is the heartbreaking reality, I will say, and I will stop here for now, but the heartbreaking reality is that because animals are so dismissed from the conversation, the suffering of the people that are working in the supply chain is also greenwashed into oblivion. And I feel like my role and my little contribution, I will say, is to make these stories visible. Because as we say, an image is worth 1,000 words. So yeah, that's I hope that answers your first question. But
yeah, thank you very much, Rebecca. I'm just curious to know why you decided to focus on animals. Where this kind of care and interest for the animal world in the fashion industry, which implies other consequences, where it comes from? If you can tell us.
Well, there are so many reasons. I think that since I'm a kid, I kind of always knew that animals were in trouble on some level, but at the same time, because the system is built in a way that animals are rendered invisible in our society, or we only make visible the ones that we want to care about. For example, the pet animals, companion animals, or wild animals that we want to save from extinction. From, again, an anthropocentric perspective of I'm a human, I want to live a world where there is elephant, where there is tiger, but it's not so much about what about the animals suffering in the wild. So I've always been sensitive to this kind of issue, but at the same time, I was also consuming fashion and consumer animals in different ways. And I wore fur at some point because I didn't make the connection. I thought, oh, it's already there. I saw the product. I didn't see that, okay, this product is here because an animal had to be killed. Or I'd never made the connection until very much later in my life that, okay, leather is actually a skin because we call it leather. So there's language. And as I said, there's so much that is, creating an illusion around fashion and brands. We look at advertising, we look at celebrities. These are huge influences to make us really disconnect and forget about what's really happening. So for me, it was really important to talk about the animals because we are talking about, in the case of leather, for instance, some of the most famous brands or luxury brands, about 50 to 70% of their revenue comes from leather goods. So we're talking about industries that are entirely relying on the exploitation and the slaughter of animals, but that don't want to talk about the animals, that want us to forget about the animals, that fashion hides a lot behind the meat industry, for instance, and say, well, no, we're just making use of waste. And of course, we know that this is not the reality and this is not true.
Cool. Thank you. Very good insights about the name of we give to things, because it's kind of the beginning of all the marketing ideas. Now you tell stories, you don't tell exactly what's happening. So you create an imaginary world around things. Thank you so much. Sara, hello. Thank you so much for joining us today. Sara Sozzani Hello is the creative director of the Sozzani Foundation, and she collaborates with educational institutions and serves on several boards working and creating awareness on for a more responsible planet. Thank you for joining us today. It's very important to have you your view here, because you are an educator, and so it's an important part of the whole system, but also you support a lot of sustainable initiatives, and you come from an important media outlet, which is Vogue, that can be in part considered accountable for some of the consequences of the fashion industry, and at the same time, I believe also being empowered to help reverting the trend. So a kind of specular question to you. Well, tell us a little bit about what you do, introduce yourself, and the focus of most of the discussions happening are on microplastic, land pollution, and people's working conditions. And of course, we said this very important point, leading the industry operators to focus mainly on sustainable and natural materials that don't use plastic, that bring the production back to locally, and to control the production chain to protect the workers. But why the animals use and treatments are so dismissed in the media and public opinion, do you think, from your perspective?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Maria Teresa, thank you for having me here. And obviously, there's a lot to answer to your question. Well, I'm not going to tell what I do because it's a lot and it's not about me. So I've been working in the industry for almost 30 years. And basically, what I'm doing right now, I've always believed in the new generation of creatives, also supporting all those figures that didn't have a platform where to, let them hear their voice. And this was about, creativity and designers. And then obviously talking about the new generation, I spoke with education and fashion schools, but basically in the last, I wouldn't say so long time, but I would say 7-8 years, obviously it came up to me kind of hard of how responsible the industry was in with the behavior and the production towards the planet. So what I kind of not decided from one day to another, but it came quite natural to the fact that since I was supporting, talents which I thought were talented and had to be seen, at the end I was, in a way supporting the fact of producing more and giving more visibility to designers. So in the end, I said, well, listen, and I hope Rebecca agrees with me. I think right now, the important thing is really to create awareness and consciousness, because, what's already done to the planet, we cannot go back. The damage has been done. So the thing is to do less damage and improve and change the system, because this is the only way that we can allow us not to end it all, because, if I have to be completely egoistic, I say myself, well, I don't have family, I don't have kids, who cares? When I'm going to die, I'm going to die. But this is not my case. I think I support the new generation because I think they're our future and they need to be supported. And this is very important because the new generation has a very conscious vision of how the planet should be. And they're also very pissed off at how the planet is now. And I think that we need to support them because many of them have great ideas of how to make changes. And so my role right now, I feel myself, educator, but more to use my visibility to create awareness and consciousness. And since I think that each of us can really be a change maker, I use my power of communication, because I find myself not to be a powerful person, but it's more people from the outside that tell me that, is about supporting all those people that wants to make a change and have something to say. And Rebecca, who's here today, is one of those people that she says in her small way of doing it, which is a huge way instead, because what she did was never been done. No one has ever been in the back end of the industry. People like us, or maybe the people that are listening to us, which are more interested, are very probably sensible. Maybe they got an idea of what was happening, but not really a realistic idea. So when I got to see her her documentary, which was more or less a year and something ago, I was obviously shocked, but I wasn't shocked about the images I was seeing. Yeah, obviously even that, but I was more shocked about something that has always been there. And in a way, I never cared about it, because that's what happened. So I think this is the most important thing to do, is to put this on the front row and say, listen, this is what's happening. And it's not about saying names and it's the fault of that. This is the consequences of every one of us. It's our way of living. It's our way of consuming. And obviously the fashion system has a huge responsibility because, first of all, it has a responsibility because it's an overproduction without no sense. We don't need that. And moreover, it has a responsibility because the power of communication right now is the most powerful tool that you have. And it has a powerful tool, yes, that Instagram made us have it in a way free, but not really. And it's a powerful tool where you put money and you can communicate whatever you want. So basically greenwashing. And so I think that, you know, the industry has, the fashion industry, but basically any kind of other industry, but let's say the fashion industry, because it's that industry that everyone looks at as a dream, as something beautiful, as something unreachable, as something cool, luxury and everything. But then that's the back end is this. So we're not, you know, pointing out saying you're all bad. I mean, you have to go all in jail. I mean, that's never going to change anything. I think it's about creating awareness, saying this is what's happening. I mean, think about the consequences when you go, you know, in a shop and ask. I always say, you know, when you go to the grocery and you buy food, you always usually buy your own food. Once you buy something new, the first thing is turn around and see what are the ingredients. And this has to happen even with clothes. You want to know who did that clothes, how was it produced, that person, was it paid? I mean, now we're talking about passport. I mean, in France, there's been this fact of, you know, the clothes need to have passports, which is, I absolutely agree on that. But we also need to understand that if you decide to buy a leather bag, I mean, the consequences are looking at slave. So I'm not saying do not buy any more leather bags because I'm going to be completely naive and unrealistic thinking that people stop. But the fact of saying to people, I mean, do you need really to buy that? There is an alternative, you know, I mean, giving on the table alternatives. Because this is my point of view. So maybe Rebecca, which has been more active on that, may not agree. But what's been done, like PETA, that has really did it, you know, really done it with harsh images and everything. I think it's very impactful, but not that impactful because people then think, oh my God, these are the usual activists that are just, you know, putting dead animals on screen, which is when I always see it, I cry. I mean, I cried now seeing these 3 images that Rebecca showed me. So I'm very sensible to that. But I do think there has to be more. And like Slay, I think it was an excellent example of saying, I mean, images are stronger than words. But right now, we also need words to explain what you're looking at, because people which are not, you know, do not have the culture, do not have the education, are not interested. It's not, images are not enough. They have to be supported of what you're seeing and what are the consequences of what you're seeing, if you agree. So I didn't quite maybe answer to all your questions, but maybe I missed some of them. So if you want to ask me something else, because maybe I went out a little bit of
No, thank you. It was definitely interesting to hear what you said. Just like, what do you think in the discussions happening around fashion? There is very little or nothing said about animals treatment. Why do you think so?
Well, people don't talk about it because it's not cool. It's not beautiful. It's not. I mean, Rebecca said it. I mean, the fashion industry has always been about having, you know, a beautiful window, all well made and very expensive, and then no one knows what happens on the back, you know. So I think nobody's talking about it because there's a very high percentage of people that don't give and I'm not going to say a bad word, but don't really care. And
do you think they care more about fast fashion, like the consequences on environment and microplastic caused by fast fashion is more appealing, is more like
no, because if you talk about, if you stop 10 people in the street and you talk about microplastic, they don't even know what they are and how they are generated and how it happens. I'm telling normal people on the street, let's forget the people in the industry. So basically, I'm telling something probably bigger, which takes more time. But when we talk about education, it's the word itself, education. So you need to educate people since not at the age of 10, but the age of 2. You need to educate children from when they're 2 or what's happening, or what's the consequences of microplastic, what's the consequences of eating junk food, what's the consequences of, you know, of your acts. So it seems really a lot, but in the end, human beings get used to everything. So it's a matter of really being like always hitting on the same spot and not, you know, and not stopping. I mean, if I have to think, a year and a half ago, I mean, a movie like Slay, probably if it was done 6 years ago, it wouldn't have had that kind of attention than now. Not because 6 years ago the problem wasn't there, because now there's obviously a very much stronger tool of communication. Probably they're more sensible people. I mean, as Rebecca was saying, it's a matter of giving something, and then people have the responsibility to create awareness. So going back to your question, the industry is not thinking about that because they're just moving away the problem.
I think Sarah blocked.
Maybe I'll add on to that until Sarah comes back.
Yeah, go.
Yes, I think what Sarah says is very, it's very true. But at the same time, I think plastic is a very non-intimate thing to address. You know, nobody feels responsible directly for plastic. Of course, we all contributing. Sadly, there's single-use plastic. There's plastic is everywhere in our lives. It's in our clothes. It is really, we do live in a plastic world, unfortunately. But I think it's also an easy kind of scapegoat in a way, in terms of, you know, looking at what we do to animals is extremely painful, and it makes us feel guilty as well. And that's where I think we will talk about emotions later, but emotional intelligence is very important to take into account with facts, with science. For instance, you know, the huge campaigns around banning straws is a very important one. And this image, we've all seen this image of this turtle, you know, with having a straw removed from inside of her. And that was such a powerful, you know, video and moment. But at the same time, if we look at most of the plastic that is in the ocean, and the #1 cause of death with all these marine animals, for instance, this is actually coming from the plastic fishing nets. We're talking about almost half of the plastic in the ocean. So when it comes to animals, I think we just really kind of scared to look at it, and we need to turn away from it, and we don't want to take accountability. I think that's also part of why Sarah is back.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely is one of the reasons. Sarah, while you were probably having some technical issues.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. Just Rebecca added a few points on what you were saying. Do you, if you didn't have anything to say on that question, I guess we can move on.
No, it was just that. Sorry if I don't know what happened, and I'm connected with my phone because my computer today decided not to function. Sorry.
No worries. Before passing to next questions, I forgot to say at the beginning that whoever has questions to us, any of us here in the conversation, you can write the questions in the Q&As button here, and at the end of the conversation, we'll reply to everything. So Rebecca, back to you. I wanted to ask you, of course, we also live in a society that, consume meat for as a food, and the consumption of meat is very high. In China has been created one of the biggest, probably the biggest building that will host billions of animals for the food industry. So we have all the evidence that how the animals are treated, and also the danger of intensive farming on human health as well. So why do you think people should be more sensitive about animal cruelty and killing for the fashion industry? What do you think it should be the emotion to tap into in order to really touch on something powerful that will lead to some kind of changes? And when you, with your film or with your the activism work you do, who do you refer to? Do you think we should talk with the masses, or with the early adopters, or with the policymakers? Do you have an idea of where we should start from?
Well, that's a lot of big questions, I will say. So I think the issue we have, the climate crisis, for me, is an ethical crisis. You know, humans, after millions of years of evolution and hundreds and thousands of years of evolution, humans have empathy. And empathy is something that is really important to us. Nature has selected empathy as a human trait. It means we need to use it. And so we need to use, of course, science and data and, you know, all the intellect that we have, but we also need to use our emotion and our emotional intelligence, because these are telling us something. And so when we look at animals, to be honest, like, even if it was okay for the planet to do what we do to animals, we should still not be doing that. It's, you know, that's it. It's not something that we should continue, even if it was okay for the planet. But it turns out that this planet is actually made for harmony and for symbiosis. And the more we assault life, whether life is embodied as an animal, as a forest, as a river, or as someone else far away or just around the corner, the more we create this violence, this unnecessary violence, then the more unsustainable it becomes. And we need to really understand and reconcile that violence is not sustainable. And I think, you know, a lot of companies, brands in fashion, or even other companies, anybody can create a complex equation to force the definition of sustainability, because there is not one definition of sustainability, as we know. But what we can all, I hope a lot of people can agree on, is that we should not continue to create more violence. There is already enough. You mentioned that people are consuming meat. Yes, a lot of the countries like China or India, the meat consumption is on the rise, in Indonesia as well. But just because the consumption of meat is on the rise doesn't mean that fashion should continue to actually take a product, I mean, skins really that are not a product, their skins are not a material, but taking the skins from this violent industry for another violent product and to make it fashion. I feel like it's 2023. We have over 100 companies that are working on material innovation and sustainable alternatives to leather. Some of them are already plastic free. They are already out by brands. A lot of brands are looking at alternatives to leather. So just recently, Pinko has released an animal-free bag in collaboration with Italian brand Mio Mojo. You have Tory Burch that actually has also launched a leather-free handbag, skin-free leather handbag. Obviously, Stella McCartney has been doing a lot of job for a long time, but there's a lot also of smaller brands and, you know, young creators and young designers who are turning to sustainable and animal-free options for all these reasons. So just because people will never stop to do something, it doesn't mean that we should continue to aggravate the problem. Child trafficking is still happening, you know, human trafficking is still happening, violence is still happening, women are still being discriminated against. Just because it has been happening for a long time and that it's still happening, it doesn't mean that we should still continue, and that we should not challenge our involvement in participating in this. So fashion should take accountability in co-killing the animals for leather, because they are buying the skin. And in a lot of the ways, it also doesn't excuse everything else from feathers, you know, fur, all of that. You know, we have some of the most powerful brands and groups in the world. So group LVMH is still using fur with a lot of nonsensical animal welfare, you know, human washing, communication, a lot of greenwashing as well. They talk about their crocodilian standards for the fur, for the crocodile farms, the exotic farms that they own in Australia, for instance. And in the end, you end up with animals there's more animal in captivity that are being brutally slaughtered at 2-3 years old versus a natural lifespan of 70 years old. Then you have actually these animals in the wild, in their natural environments. So if we don't address the ethical crisis, we will not address the climate crisis. We need to really reduce our consumption across the board. We need to review what we consume, how we consume it, when we have a choice. A lot of people do not have a choice. It is a privilege to have a choice. And so if we do have this privilege to choose something else, then I feel like we have a moral obligation to do so, really.
Yeah, you said a very important point, I think, is like having the option to choose, which leads me nicely to the next question to Sarah, which was how can we make sure that the sustainable fashion doesn't become a prerogative for the rich? So those who can choose and can afford to buy more expensive clothes that respect the standard for ethical and sustainable items. So what is if there is a journey into how the system should change to produce affordable, fashionable clothing that are also sustainable, which I think this is the biggest issue. This is one of the reasons why I think it's a little bit of a mistake to concentrate on fast fashion, because while the consequences are big, we keep pointing finger on people that often don't have choice. You know, maybe they have to buy clothes, but they don't have money to buy expensive clothes. And definitely, I agree that is an ethical issue, and that we should tell people to buy more, to buy less, and to buy almost like to not buy anymore. But I find it a little bit unfair to focusing on the people that have less choice. So how can we make, at the moment, sustainable fashion, it's more like a prerogative for people that can afford to have a choice and to spend more for items that cost more, because there is a cost for producing sustainably. So Sarah, to you.
Well, this is the day with really important questions. I mean, obviously, I think that, I mean, I'm going to take it a little bit more broader. I mean, the problem that there has been families and people not managing to buy clothes because they don't have money for the social situation, or, I mean, this has always happening. So the thing is, the question is, I mean, whoever decides to do a brand right now has to think about being responsible and doing it the right way. And so the fact is that you pay your you pay what what you're buying. So if then we know between us, maybe even probably people that listen to us, not the people from the street, that if you go in a shop and you buy a t-shirt for €5, there's something wrong. So the thing is that it's not even the person that cannot permit himself, it's the person that maybe can buy a t-shirt of 30 up or more euros, which is the right, I mean, there's not a right or wrong price. It's about how this t-shirt and who made it and the process and how it's made, the value of the item. But the thing is that all these fast fashion are bought by people that for sure for sure I cannot speak to them, but can permit themselves more. So it's not just about how much money you have in your pocket, but it's how you spend it and the reason why you're spending it. I mean, this is really a cultural fact of everything, because when, for example, I basically post things on Shane, then most of the questions are, well, I don't have the money. This is what I can permit myself. I mean, I'm sorry, this is not the answer. I mean, I don't want to be very unpolite, because I respect people that probably they don't have, they have economic issues and everything, and everyone has to dress themselves. So, but that's, I mean, I totally respect you. So I think about, okay, what could be the solution? And the solution is that now everyone is talking about vintage, recycle, and upcycling, which can be a solution, but not really, because in the end, we are obviously not, in a way, thinking of not, oh, okay, I'm wearing a vintage shirt, I'm not, putting something new, which is okay in the end. And maybe think about, creating a brand or a cooperative for people that, they cannot permit themselves to buy clothes. So you go and buy vintage clothes, recycle clothes, which is okay. But in the end, I think it's much of a cultural also way of seeing things. Because, for example, I mean, Rebecca, I'm just saying this in Italy, in Italian. I mean, in Italy, there is, when you go, there are all these cooperatives for people, some Francescani, or even from Comune. I don't know how you say it in English now, Comune, but your state, the city of, I don't know, you live in Lausanne.
Municipality.
Yeah, municipality gives, food to those families that cannot have, they don't have, they have money, but maybe to just cover the expenses, minimal expenses, they don't have. So they go and get food to the municipality or to cooperatives. I mean, for clothing,
it would be the same. But here we're saying we're putting on the market again clothing, and we're not, we're not we're solving the problem. So the thing is that we can give a service to those families that cannot afford to buy clothes and give them vintage or recycle, or maybe create a cooperative that, use responsible designs at a price which are correct, because on the back there is like LVMH or Pinot that, gives the money to say, you know what, I do really good stuff, but, your t-shirt, you're paying it less, but the price is that because, you cannot afford it, but we want that you have, the right. I mean, there's many ways of seeing it, but in the end, the really important thing is the culture and the education, because then, I mean, and here I know I'm not putting the people in the same boat, but more aligned on the same point of view, that whether you are someone that can permit themselves a t-shirt of $30, I don't know, 100 euros, and someone that doesn't, in the end, we are people that need to understand if it's necessary to buy it. That's the point. I mean, that's the real point. And here I'm going above if you have 10 euros in your pocket or not, because that's obviously another problem. But this is the fact of why, and here why someone like a company like Shane, I mean, governmentally and even principle and for everything is on the market. I mean, there's something, I mean, why? This is something that cannot happen. I mean, we don't put, I don't think BMW puts a car which doesn't work, or maybe that after 5 minutes it explodes, or its carbon emission is, I don't know, 500 times more than normal because it goes faster. I mean, this is not going to happen. So why cars has this and the industry doesn't? I mean, this is the real questions that people are going to ask. Then obviously there's always going to be cultural issues and diversity and include. I mean, there's all this happening right now. But I think basically going back to your question and to who asked, okay, I buy Shane because I don't have the money to. But I'm sorry, I know that you have problems, but it's not a solution to go and buy someone that do not pay their workers, and you're not respectful. You're in the end not respecting someone that's in your same position. So,
yeah, no, we all agree. We all agree that it's like I was trying to understand why we talk about something that refers to the masses, so people that have sometimes less choice.
Because it's easier. Because it's easier.
Okay, because it's easier, but it's a choice. It's a choice of the system to focus on that, because maybe leather and fur, it's a market for more privileged people, So again, the question is, who is leading the change? Where do we start from if we want to change the system? Because I think we all agree that is a cultural and ethical issue. We totally agree on this. So if we want to change the system, where do we start from? Who do we talk to? And what is the emotion we need to tap into in order to create a new narration around the fashion?
Well, the only one are the governments that make the laws. That's the only people that can really make a change.
You think so?
Even though right now, I say for Italy, it's a disaster, or in any country, but the government, it's the only government, because also the UN that's making, a lot of, and also the parliament. But in the end, then countries, we have, I'm not going to get political, but we have examples that the EU says, okay, you have to do that, and countries do not listen. So, I mean, it's like, it's not easy, but for sure, the most impactful are to create laws. Because in the fashion industry, there are no kind of laws. I mean, so everyone does whatever they want. They're beginning to come laws, but they're not. I mean, how many millions and billions of animals are slain every year? It doesn't make sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's like, because then people say, oh, well, anyways, they're all animals in allevamento, how do you say, breeded. So they think it's like, I don't know, when they cloned Dolly. So if it's cloned, it's not an animal. I mean, this is how they think, people. I mean, in the end, it's that. It's like, and so, I mean, it's not the point. And it's much easier to do that. I mean, if I have to think every time I go in the States and I go into a Walmart or those kind of, I say, oh my God, I mean, there is food like for, I don't know how many people, and 3/4 of this food is bad. And then they say, well, in America, 70% of the population is overweighted. Hello, why? I mean, so,
yeah.
so it's a broader, but going back to your question, make it simple. It's creating laws, and really education is fundamental. But education, real education. I mean, obviously, because then really education and starting from when you are free and you go to school.
Yeah, in fact, I'll go back to that question to you. Rebecca, do you want to add on to this latest point?
Actually, yeah, I do. I mean, I really agree with what Sarah says. I feel like there's actually no regulation right now that is capping the production of fashion. Like brands can produce as much as they want, pretty much. And a lot of that is being destroyed before hitting the shelves or getting to landfills or getting into like this never ending, like we have enough materials. We should be, for me, what I would like to see in an ideal world is that there's nothing new that is created anymore. Let's just work with what is already existing. Let's just work on recycling, upcycling the fabrics that are already there instead of producing ever more. And I just want to answer real quick on your point of fur and leather being privileged. Actually, not so much. I mean, in Slay, I focused a lot on luxury brands because they are the ones who have the means to do things better than everyone else, but they do not. But at the same time, you can actually buy very cheap leather. You can buy very cheap fur. So I just want to share with you this photo that is, so this is in China, but obviously, as we know, everything goes all around the world. This is a rabbit key ring that is made of real rabbit fur, and the cost is $1.5. This is before negotiation, even before wholesale or anything like that. So, the fur industry really understands that in order that people don't want the big, fur coats anymore, but then they want the pom-pom and they want the fur trim. And we still, this still adds up to millions and millions and millions of more lives, that are taken just for this. I want to share another photo real quick because we're talking about overconsumption. This is an aerial view, a drone view of a sale yard in Australia where, when you see all the sheep that are running free on the hills in the daytime, and it looks fantastic, and you're like, wow, the wool industry looks amazing. Well, all these actually sheep, whether they are bred and raised and exploited for wool or not, even the merino sheep actually end up in this kind of sale yard. And then they are going to be auctioned, and they're going to be either sent on live exports to the Middle East where they will be slaughtered, or they are going to be slaughtered there. And then you end up with the skins like this. For instance, this is for a very famous brand of boots that rhymes with bug. And, like this is a shot that we took actually at the brand in the basement where they have the skin. And I mean, the fact that this baby sign on these skins, because these are the skins all of lambs who are baby. I mean, for me, again, as we said, like the visuals can be so powerful. And for me, like this one is one of the strongest. And I was really shocked actually to see that and to be present.
Cool. Thank you, Rebecca. Sarah, do you think, being an educator as well, what is obviously we've been talking about an ethical and cultural kind of revolution needed. So the brand new generation of designers, artists, photographers do you think they could lead the change? And this been streamed by media, and is there something already happening, you think, in the fashion education and media world that goes into this direction and then can really move people into a more ethical way of being on earth? And yeah, just this one, and then I'll ask you a final question to both of you.
To make the answer easy, no, but because I mean, if we have to think about the easiest way, so seeing it on communication, Instagram, or the social networks that we see. I don't see it enough. If I have to think about, since, you know, I work a little bit more into depth in the industry, there are changes happening. The only thing that for me is very frustrating is that all these changes are happening. I mean, Rebecca said a few examples and there are many more, but the big brands, which I say always big brands, not because I have to point the finger towards them, but it's the ones that they have the power to show that their changes are happening. They are not doing it because they want to be, you know, perfect and clean and saying, okay, we're going to communicate once we're ready. But there's not going to be the day that you're ready, because there's not the perfection. It's not like you're doing a collection and you're throwing on the catwalk a halfway done suit because you didn't have the time to finish the sleeve. I mean, it's about saying the process of what's happening, because obviously we're not going to be responsible from one day to another. Sustainability 100% doesn't exist. So hello, outside, if someone tells you I'm sustainable 100%, no, big lie, because it doesn't exist. I mean, this planet, it's never going to be 100% sustainable. Probably there's going to just happen a big bang and everything starts again. So the thing is that the big brands need to communicate what they're doing. So even if it's steps, and even if you say, you know, we are launching, I don't know, a regenerated cotton made in digitally artificial intelligence, so there's nothing, you know, used, and say, wow, that's cool, and you still have other problems, it's fine. I mean, nothing. I mean, the thing is that we are beginning to live in a society that or you're perfect or it's not right. And so this is the big issue, because things are happening, but I think that I say common people, to say people that, you know, are not in the industry, that they do other jobs. They think that the fashion industry is still the industry of 15 years ago. They're not seeing any changes. They're not seeing any changes because the window shops in the high streets and in region Monte Napoleone, Fifth Avenue are the same as 10 years ago. There's no messages, there's nothing happening. And when these messages are given, they're messages just for the industry. So we're always talking between us. I mean, so that's where I say no.
Mm-hmm.
But it is happening. It is happening, not enough, I think. And maybe, as Rebecca was saying, it's a matter of discipline and laws. It's the only way of doing it, because now when laws come out from the UN and everything, they talk about it and everything. But the thing that makes me more frustrating is to receive messages, Sarah, oh my God, you're so cool. I mean, you're one of the few that are talking about it. I'm not happy about it. I mean, there's something strange. So it's like, and it's always this thing, oh, there's always someone else that takes care. Okay, so I don't care of animals because there's Rebecca that did the movie, so she did her own job. So this is done. Tick. You know, this is how people. Well, it's true in the end. I mean, I say it because, I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm not responsible. I'm not quite responsible. I'm trying to be responsible, but not so responsible as much as I want. So I'm not gonna be like the activist that now it's everything is wrong, I'm right and everything. But I think that's the point. Because another question is, but you're promoting to be more responsible and you're working and getting money from the most, you know, contradictory industry in the world. And I said, yeah, I perfectly know. And I've been working there for 30 years. But the most easiest thing is to turn around and close the door and say, who cares, you know? So, I mean, this is the point.
No, I think you are also in the position to actually, because of that, to do something about it, because communication is a very important part of the creation of the whole system. I want to ask you so many questions, but I will finish just with a quick one for both of you. I think we all agree that it's a cultural, it's an ethical, like a change that needs to happen. And I think at the basis of this needs to change the economical paradigm paradigm that is at the basis of the system, because it's like probably the most representative of the capitalistic society. So if it doesn't change the economical paradigm behind it, so profit, it's impossible to see the changes as well that come from the top. So I wonder, what do you think? Who is going to be, if we convey the message that you need to buy less, you need, why you're buying these items that you don't need, so leading naturally to the reduction of the profits for the companies, who is gonna decide that it's time to reduce their profits? I mean, this probably the cultural change needs to happen, especially or firstly to the entrepreneurs that work in the industry.
No, I mean, that's a big question. I'll just take it up real quick. I don't pretend to have all the answers to that and to have all the perfect solutions. But one thing for sure is that, as we said, we need to have laws, we need to have regulators coming into looking at where are the subsidies going from governments, how are we allowing uncapped production, and that's only how it's going to change, I feel. And so, you know, there's going to be groups that are more progressive. So, for example, the group Kering, Gucci, Balenciaga, Saint Laurent, they have a lab of material innovation. They are actively looking. They are taking steps. They're not perfect, but they are taking steps. On the other side of the spectrum, if we look at big brands, the LVMH group, you have the son of Bernard Arnault, who is the wealthiest man in the world. His son last week at Global Fashion Agenda said, I enjoy it when there are scars on the skins because it means the animals actually lived. So when you have someone who's actually so powerful from these big groups who are saying, well, yes, it's actually great to have scars on skins, and look at us, we are doing a good job because we are not throwing the skins away in the past, like in the past, we are using them. You know, this is greenwashing as well. So there needs to be really strict laws around greenwashing. There needs to be I mean, I could foresee in the near future some lawsuits against such statements and against greenwashing statements.
That I missed.
Oh, yes. Well, I can send you the link. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, no problem. I posted on Slate.film actually. And
okay.
This is a really scary statement coming from this big, huge group that has so much, that they have access to everything. You know, all the material innovators, they will love, and they are knocking on the door of LVMH, but they are set in their ways. So for me, it's going to come from regulation, and that's what I see. But we need to also understand that the €5 thing, or the cheap, or whatever the cost it is that we pay for government, whether it is €5, €100 or $200, it is not just on the back of someone's pain, whether it's an animal, etc., but it's also a big threat to our own survival. When we look at this industry that is using immense water resources, when we have droughts in many parts of the world, this is something that is really, really important to address. And animal agriculture as a whole is a leading, I would say, it is really guilty and a leading cause of deforestation, water pollution, water consumption, land degradation. This is something we really need to address. So, you know, it's not the conversation about sustainability. It's not, wool is sustainable, so let's just produce more wool and less synthetic. No, it's already out there. Let's recycle, upcycle what we have. It is not sustainable to breed and exploit 1 billion sheep for wool, especially when we understand the associated climate impact. So, yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know if that answers the question, but I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, it adds a lot of pieces, because we know that we won't find solutions today, but definitely I think it's important to start to have a conversation between people that have different roles and they have different understanding and implication even in the industry, in order to really together design a new world that needs everyone's skills and passion and vision in order to create and design a new world for real. So it's not about, you know, having a solution in hand. It's more about really working together into rewiring the system. Sarah, did you want to add something, or otherwise we pass to the Q&A if there are some questions? No? Okay.
No, if there are any questions, more than happy.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. There were a few messages in the chat which I didn't really follow, because for obvious reasons. Paul, did you want
Hi,
to?
yes. So really the chat was just, or not just, but it was from We Animals Media, Kimberly Sonnen, just talking about their work in editorial and advocacy, and also really saying thank you to Rebecca for her exceptional work in the field, which was great. So there wasn't really a question, it was more of a comment about the work that they do and some reports from the New York Times and so on about Harvard's work and research in this field about We Animals Media. There was one question which was, I think you've kind of covered, but maybe just to think about whether this is a reasonable solution or not, which is around the idea of expanding the number of people that are involved in creating and making the clothes you wear, upcycling, recycling, repairing, community centers where people can learn, source material supplies and learn how to recycle their clothes or repair their clothes, make their own clothes, vintage, thrown away, so on and so forth. So just, is that really a solution, or is it just the scale of it is always going to be so small that it's not really going to have an impact? If anybody wants to pick that up.
Anyone wants to answer to that?
Sorry, Paul, I had a connection problem. Can you just repeat the question quickly? I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. So it's basically about whether the sort of community recycling, offering spaces where people might be able to go and learn how to repair their clothes or convert or recycle clothes or upcycle vintage clothes, whether that's a reasonable solution, or is it just always going to be such a small scale activity that it's really not going to make might make people feel much better about their own individual usage, but it's not really ever going to be a scale that could actually make significant change?
Well, not easy question to answer. I mean, if you have to think about vintage and upcycling, recycling, it's now become a little bit more fashionable in the last years, but it's always been on the market since the 20s, 30s. I mean, if you have to think about, fashion and everything. So I do think it's a way of seeing, you're still consuming, because anyways, the clothes is there. I mean, it's not that you're not consuming, but obviously you're buying things which have been already made. It's nothing brand new that you go and buy at any kind of shop that has brand new things. As I said, and this is like, I'm going to be kind of annoying because I always repeat it, it's always about cultural and education, because the fact is, for sure, if the question is it better to go in a shop and buy something new or go in a shop and buy something not new? The second, not new, because you're not supporting new production and everything. But it's not that the point. The point is, open your cupboard and say, do I need something new? Do I need to buy something more? I mean, that's the starting point. But then it's not enough, because as we had done for the last hour, it's about legislation, it's about laws, it's about everything. Because why do big, agglomerates need to produce so much? Just think about how many outlets. I mean, the outlet is the answer to what we're doing. I mean, and there are huge brands which have always also worked that open 50,000 square meters of outlet, and the word it says, it's outlet. It's all stuff that it's not being bought. I mean, so why can you say, okay, this brand produces, 10,000 pieces a year, okay? And you sell maximum 2,000. Hello, you're not gonna, next year, not gonna do 10,000, you're just gonna do maybe 3,000, which is still a lot, because 1,000 is gonna off. I mean, that's the point. It's about creating laws, limits, because right now we are like unlimited. It's like the scene of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when he gives the sweet that never ends. I mean, this is the fact. I mean, it never ends. That people continue to produce, and there's no limit to that. And that's the most, then you see all those images in Ghana that there are fields full of clothes. I mean, and you see what happens in Slay and everything.
I totally agree. I think if we can add something which is probably food for thought for the next talk, probably. Rebecca, you touched on emotional intelligence. I think this has a lot to do with that, because advertising and all the fashion world that creates the desire or even the need to make you feel good about yourself by buying new clothes or wearing certain things means that we live in a society that needs objects in order to feel good about yourself. So if we do like educate on you know, where happiness comes from, which doesn't come from products and clothing, but comes from within, maybe, you know, it's a long process, a longer, definitely in the short term we need laws and everything we talked about, but educating a society in not desiring that as a way to feel good about yourself could be another way to change the, you know, the cultural and the ethical paradigm in which we live at the moment. Just a thought.
Yes, I mean, you know, I think for me, again, from my standpoint and the work that I've been doing is really to create the cultural shift that we understand that skins are not a fabric. It's really important that we understand that skins are not a material, animals are not commodities. By law, right now, that's what they are. They are commodities, they are properties, and they belong to someone, whoever is breeding them into existence for the sole objective of exploiting them and getting a profit out of that. And I think that's the cultural shift, is really to not commoditize life in any kind of form. And that's also to understand, again, that skins are not a fabric, and that's really specific to fashion. A plastic is not a fabric either. So we should really, this is like the long game, but it's really important that we get onto that. And when I talk about regulations and laws, etc., it's going to come because of people's pressure. People are going to put the pressure on it, and it can be activist. An activist is not a dirty word, it's simply someone who is active. And it can also be just everyday people who write to brands, who write to your governments, and we need to voice, to make ourselves heard, to shift things.
Wonderful, thank you. Sarah, did you want to add the last thoughts before we close?
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so sometimes, no, I mean, there's so much to talk about, so maybe we do another episode if you want, because we could go on for a long, for hours. So I think it's, I mean, for who have been listening to us, it's also a matter of obviously communication. So if you have friends and people nearby that you don't think are not sensible enough, try to sensibilize them, and that, because in the end, as I said, when you see Slay or even Junk Arma di Pieni, which is this docu-series that Matteo Ward did, and we've been working together a little bit, it's about, you know, sensibilizing and saying to people, you know, this is happening, and this is not the fault of one person or one company. This is the fault of everyone. This is the consequences of how we live. So I think that's important too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely feels like there is so much. We just opened so many doors that could be further, but I guess we have to close. Unless, Paul, you have anything else to add, I will thank everyone and Seven and Photo Wings for hosting us. This video will be published as soon as it's ready on the Seven Insider website and on the Everything is Connected website. If you want to continue the discussion, you can find us on Instagram or send us an email, and we will keep talking about it. I think it's important to talk about this more and more. So thank you so much, Rebecca and Sarah, for joining us and for offering your view and your experience and your passionate work you do around the topic of fashion, sustainable fashion. And I'm really glad you joined us. So thanks everyone that joined, and we'll talk. Maybe the next talk would be definitely after summer, and we'll keep you updated with the next one. So I guess
thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. A fantastic discussion. Made me really think about where I get my clothes from and what to do with them. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.